It's a pleasure to have both of you here. Thanks for being
Great
here.
to see you. It's great to be
Well,
back.
congratulations. What a little beauty you got
Thank
there
you.
sitting on your lap. How is the baby?
She's great. She is currently having her, I don't know, third or fourth breakfast of the day, and then I will do the handoff. But she's been a delight. It's been a very happy New Year so far for our family.
That's good. And you've fully recovered. Everything was great. She was great. You're great.
I mean, there's always a period. I think until they're about 12 weeks old, at least in my past experience, the nighttime is always iffy.
Yes.
Lots of getting up at random times, lots of diapers, but she's settling into a routine, and her big brothers are very helpful in the way that they're trying very hard to be, and we're doing great.
By the way, one of the two of us has given birth to 3 children, too, by the way. So one of us
It wasn't you, Jim.
understands
That's
it wasn't
right.
me.
That's right.
Mayor Wu, I just heard a couple of minutes before you came here, you had an announcement to make about a bus lane issue. Is that correct?
Yes. We have shared after significant feedback on Boylston Street from residents, from small businesses, that the bus lane part of the project is going to be removed. This comes after a long, long process, and I think in general we've been having a pretty intense conversation about streets and roadways, and it's important to share a little bit of the history of this. That Boston has been on a journey to think about multimodal streets for the last 15 years or so. Starting from Mayor Menino's 2013 bike plan, Boylston Street was highlighted as a major corridor that needed a facelift and needed to be accessible for more people to move down this really critical link. And then when the city did some more planning in 2017 and made a citywide Go Boston 2030 plan, Boylston Street again highlighted as needing more infrastructure. As the Orange Line shutdown happened and a bus lane had to be created so that the shuttle buses could run down the street while the Orange Line was being fixed underground, the T noted that it was actually helping the buses to have a dedicated bus lane. But in the months since that has been made permanent and finalized, we really have seen the allocation of space just for a bus lane hasn't been justified between the loading that's needed for businesses, between seniors and others trying to get into the library and other spaces. We have heard from community members that this needs to be changed. So we are going to keep the bike lane as outlined in the long-term plans, and then move towards reallocating some of the space for the needs that are specific to this street. I think in general, we're thinking about this moment in the city's development and evolution of our roadways. Again, 2013 was a period where 65 miles of bike lanes were constructed in just 3 years as the start to really thinking through our roads. And then since then, we have done a lot of quick build, meaning plastic posts and temporary paint markings just to be able to get to Vision Zero, or saving as many lives from crashes as possible, as quickly as possible. But now that we're in this moment where our administration has taken on completing or finishing many of the last links, the kind of hardest, biggest trade-off links, it's time to review all that's been done over the last 15 years and move into a more permanent, beautiful way of building our streets and not being stuck in a kind of temporary fix for safety. It's time to really ensure that we're thinking about the permanent long-term solution. So we're actually going through and doing that in a lot of different locations on Mass Ave and throughout the neighborhoods as well.
Would this have happened had there not been a challenger?
Yes, this has been in place for some time, and so we've had meetings even throughout 2024 with community members, and the lane was installed or finalized in July of 24, and so it's been multiple seasons now where we've seen how it's functioned.
Mayor,
I must admit,
sorry.
it's going to be very difficult for me to
I was just gonna
concentrate
say
this hour.
that.
So I'm looking at your gorgeous little baby girl, who seems to be staring right at me. I'm sure she's not, but she seems
I'm
to be.
sure she
she's
is.
so cute. She's got her little Boston Public Radio T-shirt
By the way,
on.
if you are not watching us streaming today, and this is Connor, who is the father of this beautiful new child who is taking over. Connor, thank you very much. It's good to see you. Mayor Wu, we've talked a lot, I'm sure you've thought a lot about the tsunami of executive orders that have come out of the White House. Lots of institutions have made changes as a result. I'm sure people read in the Globe. GBH is among them, making some changes to DEI things. And once Marjorie and I are not 100% clear about what the changes are, as soon as we have an opportunity to talk to our bosses, we'll share that with the public. But are you having to change some things that the city is doing in response to what Donald Trump is doing?
The things that we are changing are shoring up and protecting against risks that are coming from the federal government. We have had to look at all the funding that we've been allocated and really ensure that the legal language is there in contracts to protect them, and to work with the Attorney General Campbell and other colleagues to push back in places where those executive orders have already crossed the line. We are not changing how we do business in Boston. We're not changing our focus on including every person in the work that we do. And that is the function of what government is supposed to be doing. If you think about the Boston Public Health Commission, their mission is to ensure that all Bostonians live long and healthy lives. And it's very clear that when there are disparities by race, by economic situation, by neighborhood, we have to not ignore them or paint over them or pretend we're using different words, but really look at that head on and put the resources where they need to go to address that.
Well, let me ask you about two specific things, though. We've been reading, and we've spoken to you about the reparations task force in the city. That's one question. The second thing is both the Globe and GBH, our colleagues, have done some wonderful reporting about the frighteningly pitiful numbers of contracts, city, state, including my home city of Cambridge, that have been going out to minority and women contractors. You've increased that number to minority businesses dramatically, more than doubled, I think, from 2023 to 2024. Is either the reparations task force or this minority contracting focus at risk because of
No.
what the president's doing on race and gender?
Not at all. No, we are continuing, and in fact, what Boston represents and what we are such clear proof of is that when you look at the reality of our communities, when you look at disparities that exist between outcomes on health and longevity, or household income or home ownership, it's very clear that historically policies have led us to this point, and that policies are needed to ensure that we're all benefiting from the full participation of our entire community, economically and otherwise. And so our city is known as the safest city in the country. We have been seeing job growth and a desire to be part of Boston, and major companies moving here like Lego and others because of what Boston represents. And it's because of the policies that really focus on closing gaps and including everyone.
We're talking to Mayor Wu. We'll get to your calls and texts in a minute, 877-301-8970.
You know, Jim was asking about the impact of some of these executive orders, though, and in some cases, the president has said he's going to withhold federal funds from organizations, colleges, cities, states that don't follow his directives. So what does that mean for Boston in terms of money?
It's one thing, I think what we've learned in the last several weeks since the inauguration is that it's one thing to issue a statement that seems to fulfill a campaign promise or something that was within Project 2025. And it's another thing to have that actually have legal force to be able to be implemented. Many of the most intense executive orders have already been stopped in the courts, and every day is a new set of actions that are taken in the legal and judicial system to be able to sort out what is real and what is not real. So far, we have not had direct impacts on the types of funding that we're most worried about because of the legal processes that are still playing out. Now, as those get resolved, we're monitoring very closely to see if anything needs to be adjusted to the realities of what's happening. But now's a time when Boston is going to lean on our resources here locally, the authority that we have within the city level and within city government to do everything we can to continue pushing forward on our climate resilience goals, on housing affordability, on investing in public education, even at a time when the federal government is looking to threaten all of those.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we've talked about, or they've talked about in Washington, is the closing of the Department of Education, or the shrinking of that, and how much of school funding around the country is impacted. So is that among the funds that you're most concerned about?
We're eyeing everything. I mean, so far there have already been orders on transportation funding. There have been orders on research and medical funding that affects the entire region, and Boston most of all, across any city in the country. And there's been discussion around public health dollars as well, and all education, everything has been in there. So we are looking to do what we can do and to identify the places where we can continue expanding our work through partnerships. We've had just a very, very strong relationship with state government and the Healy administration and our partners on how we will stand as a united front. We've had a very strong partnership with local philanthropic and private sector institutions who also understand their obligation and their opportunity to stand in the gap now.
We're talking to Mayor Wu, 877-301-8970. Now here's your opportunity.
Aaron, in Dorchester, you're on with Mayor Wu.
Hey, Aaron.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. I love your show.
Thanks.
I listen obsessively.
Thanks.
Mayor Wu, thanks for coming on the show. I'm a Boston public school teacher, and I'll be blunt. Teachers around the city are disillusioned and, frankly, furious at you for allowing contract negotiations to go on for a full year now. We started last February. I just want to ask why. Why have you allowed the bargaining to drag on for so long? No flexibility on wages, very little openness to any of our many constructive proposals. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
So, Aaron, first of all, thank you for what you do every day for our students and being in one of the most important jobs in the city. I have had an eye into what's been happening in the contract negotiations, and I'll just say this. One, I think the city, and certainly our administration and the BTU are on the same page when it comes to what we want for our students, and that is for every possible resource to be there for the supports and infrastructure for students with disabilities, multilingual learners, and many of the places that historically the city has not provided enough infrastructure and funding. That needs to be resolved. And we recognize that educators bear so much of the responsibility when it comes to paraprofessionals or others whose income gaps are really making it difficult for people to both take care of their students and take care of their own families and put food on the table. I will say that bargaining is a two-way street, and the city has remained at the table, proposal after proposal, really trying to sort through some of these issues. We, as you know, are bound by state law in the amount of revenue that the city takes in every year. Because we can't come up with our own revenue sources, because when we try to do so, we get shut down at the legislature, because since for 4 decades, we have been restricted by Prop 2.5, which puts the property tax restriction capped at 2.5% growth every year, which is far less than inflation year after year. There is a limit to what we can do and still be able to afford everything that the city has to take care of. And so we're working within those difficult constraints. I think we see that across many districts, even in the Commonwealth and certainly around the country. But I am hopeful and eager to get this done. I know my team is setting aside daily 8-hour blocks to be at the bargaining table, and we continue in good faith to have collaborative, productive discussions with union leadership around how we can get this done. I know this is weighed heavily on our educators, and it's a very, very important component of how we deliver services, but we are within the realities of how budgeting has to happen in order for us to be a fiscally strong city in maintaining and sustaining what we can do.
Aaron, thanks for your call. Good luck to you and your colleagues. We're talking to Mayor Wu for the hour at 877-301-8970.
So, Mayor, I understand you are going to accept the invitation to go to Washington and talk to Congress about immigration. It would seem that it could be fraught. I mean, they could be screaming at you for 45 minutes or
6
an
hours,
hour,
I hear.
Or 6 hours, that's
6
right.
hours.
That's right. I thought you should have brought the baby with you, myself.
Well, we are booked for March 5th. The mayors of Denver, Chicago, and New York will also be going, and it really was not presented as an optional choice for us to go or not go, and I gladly am taking the opportunity to go down to D.C. and defend our city, defend our policies and values that have led us to become the safest city in the country. The framing of this set of questions and the congressional invitation has been around immigration and how policies that are focused on building trust within our immigrant communities and within the community as a whole are, it's been framed as that is somehow creating opportunity for dangerous and violent behavior to thrive in our cities. In fact, we represent the opposite if you look at the facts. Gun violence has been at the lowest levels every single year during our administration, and Boston has had policies on the books that allow us to ensure that everyone is part of keeping our community safe, knowing that you can reach out to call 911 when you need help, knowing that you can report information that you have safely, and knowing you can bring your child to school, be part of our community, where immigration status is neither a barrier to receiving services nor a shield to behavior that violence or other harm where you'll be held accountable regardless of immigration status as well. I think we are the clear example and proof on both counts that this is a community that represents, in fact, what many other cities are asking us what they should do on public safety.
Was there a point at any time that you were considering not complying with their invitation?
Well, in fact, the original invitation was issued just two or so weeks ago, and it was for yesterday.
I know that, yeah.
So, again, you see the baby needs to eat just about every
Well,
30 to
other than
45
that,
minutes.
Other
and so
than the kids'
that
scheduling, was there any doubt you'd show up?
We've had some back and forth about, because there are multiple pieces to the request. One was around information and a very, very wide-ranging ask for any documents related to a whole broad subject that we've now been working to understand what they're actually looking for. In terms of the request to go down, a lot of it was logistical and coordinating with other cities and making sure that in terms of my physical health and recovery that I could be in line with what my doctor was recommending.
Are the other three mayors showing up on the same day?
That is my understanding,
They are.
yes.
Amy in Boston, you're on with the mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu. Hi. Amy,
Hi, can you hear me?
we can.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, yes.
Great. So
we can.
I have a question for Mayor Wu.
Great.
I've become concerned about some of the recent actions by the Boston Public Library. They've made me worried about the disability protections for city employees. One of my good friends works for the library, and she's been very successful in surviving and thriving with a terminal cancer that is really a challenge. However, the library has denied allocations for sick bank hours. She's given 35 hours per year and is not able to use any vacation time to attend appointments or any necessary treatment. This makes me more concerned, though, for all the rest of the employees of the city because they don't have access to Massachusetts paid family medical leave. They aren't given access to any buy-ins for short-term or long-term disability that they can even pay for themselves. And so once they're out of sick time, they are vulnerable to termination proceedings for not attending work. So I'm very, very concerned about kind of learning how vulnerable city employees are, not just my friend, but every single person who works for the city has none of the protections that the rest of the state has.
What's your question, Amy,
yeah.
if I may? What's the question?
So my question is this actually really the case? Are people this vulnerable, or is this a specific action that your office is looking into? How do ill employees of the city receive protection?
We understand that. Thanks for your question,
Thank
Amy.
you, Amy. Thank you, and thank you for advocating and speaking up. I am familiar with this particular beloved employee and the situation here. We treat privacy very seriously in terms of personnel situations, and so I can't get into the specific details here, but I will say that we are aware and working on understanding how best to support in this case. As with, in some ways, the previous question as well, there are specific parameters that the city has to work within in terms of what the collective bargaining agreements say and what the general policies are that we have to follow, and we're always focused on the health and well-being of employees as the foundation for being able to talk about anything that the city does. It really is because of the amazing people who work for our city and our office and our team has been focused on making sure that we could create a whole support system to really prioritize professional development and personnel supports and a whole manner of issues that I think previously were much more codified in formalities. And so we want to keep this going, and appreciate you reaching out on this specific case, although we can't get into too much of it here.
Yeah, Mayor, Michael Flaherty, former city councilor and former mayoral candidate, not against you, but against Tom Menino, was ousted as, well, I guess he was the general counsel, Boston Water and Sewer Commission. The Globe story says, while it's not publicly known what specifically prompted the outside investigation of Flaherty, his management of the commission's legal department had come under fire. He only worked there a year at $225,000, and he got a $253,000 payout. Did you have any involvement in that? And whether you did or not, are you okay with that?
I was not involved in this situation. Water and Sewer is a separate entity from the city, and again, with personnel situations, things happen and situations change, and there are a whole set of legal and contractual parameters that end up shaping the outcomes of what happens in individual cases.
But are you, specifically, I understand you can't discuss personnel if it's yours, but as you just said, there's a line between you and this commission. Are you comfortable with Michael Flaherty getting a whole year's severance after there was apparently some problem with his performance, and he's getting more than a year's pay after only working there a year?
As I understand, this was the agreement that was reached and comes from consideration of a whole set of factors. So I'm not familiar with all the details here, but Water and Sewer is its own entity, and they function and make their own personnel decisions.
Okay.
877-301-8970 is the number to call or text. We're talking with Michelle Wu, the mayor of Boston. She's here at the top of the hour. Terry from Jamaica Plain, you're on with the mayor.
Hi, Terry.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Margie.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I want to start with a big thank you to Mayor Wu for her support for the Winter Walk for the Homeless.
Oh,
It was a great time over the weekend.
It was a great time. The walk supports 24 different organizations looking at different aspects of homelessness. But I want to get to my question. And my question is that we're looking to the Democratic mayors to show the rest of the country that there is a way of dealing with our problems which shows respect for the people who are caught up in the problem. So my question is, Madam Mayor, do you have a vision for homelessness and housing that all of us who want to help in Boston can plug into?
Yes, absolutely. I am blessed every day to work alongside, I would say, the best team on housing in the country, led by our Chief of Housing, Sheila Dillon, who is nationally known as an expert for her depth of experience and creativity when it comes to putting together all the pieces in a very complicated system to be able to fund and produce affordable housing. Under her watch and under our collaboration, the city in the last 3 years has produced more affordable housing than in the last 25 years. And that's been through a combination of using our funding and deploying it, particularly to fund deed-restricted housing that is guaranteed to be permanently affordable, as well as launching new and innovative programs that often rely on community partnerships to create even more impact. And so, for example, we have partnered with all of the major hospitals and healthcare institutions who've agreed to direct their community dollars into a new fund that the Boston Foundation and the city have been partnering on that is taking affordable housing, market rate affordable housing, what's called naturally occurring affordable housing, off the market and keeping it permanently affordable for the tenants who live in it. We've also been using city-owned land, whether it is a vacant parcel in the neighborhoods or a city building that needs to be redeveloped, and adding housing on top of that with a clear focus on supporting the development opportunity for local companies and local, particularly Black and Brown owned businesses, Boston-based businesses, to get their foot in the door and to have the technical support to create those homes and therefore create jobs along the way as well. We are focused on housing. There's a set of issues that we are still pushing forward on. We've put some funding in a first ever revolving fund called our Boston Accelerator Fund that will then kickstart some of the units that have already been approved but are having trouble getting across the financing finish line. So there's lots of ways where we can plug you in, and I'm very proud of the work that we're doing, and would love to, if you reach out, or if you stay on the line, we can get your contact information. I'd love to plug you into what our team is doing.
Terry, let's stick around, and our producer will take your contact information for the mayor.
You know, Mayor Wu, Josh Kraft has announced he's going to challenge you for the mayor, and that's one of the things he's criticized you about, is saying that there's stuff that's permitted, but not enough housing has been started in Boston, gotten off the ground.
Yeah, we have been focused on this 20, depending on how you count it, 26, almost 30,000 units of housing that have already been approved and gone through the community process, but are not yet in construction. And if you look at the last 3-year period that we're in, the number of what's called housing starts, new housing that's actually begun to be built, is actually higher than any time in the last 25 or so years, with the exception of periods when interest rates were at almost zero. This was in some ways an anomaly that the national economic markets over, for a 7-8 year period in the last decade or so had interest rates where it was essentially free money for developers to be able to build. Now that rates are higher and don't look like they will potentially ever go back to that near zero level, we have to be really intentional about how we're using city resources and city authority to get housing moving again. That's why we're putting funding, $110 million in our accelerator fund to getting projects going, and holding firm on affordability requirements. I've seen today that there's some buzz, although I haven't read all the details, but some of the coverage that there's now a proposal coming from out of the mayor's race, where the proposal is that again, this sort of fake rent control would be implemented, and then in fact, affordability would be dismantled, where the requirements that we have put for on-site affordability required for every new housing development to include a certain percentage of affordable units, that would be reduced back down to the levels it was many years ago.
From 20% to 13%, but at the same time, Kraft says he would raise eligibility, income eligibility.
Right, and in fact, both parts are what we hear is the exact opposite of what community members need. And you can't make Boston more affordable by reducing affordability requirements. And so I've heard with alarm some of what the housing activists have already reached out this morning, saying we need to ensure that Boston continues to grow as a city for everyone. This would take us backwards. And in fact, the assertion that lowering these requirements would unlock the 26,000 units is a total misunderstanding of the reality of the city's work. In fact, those 26,000 units were permitted under the old rules. So going back to the old rules wouldn't change anything in this case. And in fact, we have to be strong about ensuring that housing and housing affordability are at the front of the agenda, and that we're not going to let those who might have been recruited by the real estate and wealthy development community to come in and try to undo some of the requirements that we need in place for when the economy and when our housing market comes back and ensures that we will be building what Bostonians need and not just luxury housing.
One more housing question. Before I do, though, we've gotten a lot of heat from a bunch of listeners about not having Josh Kraft, who announced a few weeks ago on the show. We have tried repeatedly. Marjorie and I have been on the air 25 years. I don't think I can name one new candidate who has not been on our show a nanosecond after announcing, but we've tried, and so far we failed, and our invitation is open. Anytime his schedule is free, we're happy to do it. I have two more questions about, one about housing and one about the Kraft candidacy. You called it fake rent control, the proposal that Josh Kraft put together. What does that mean? Why do you call it that?
What I mean is that it's a distraction, because this is very misleading for Boston residents. We all know, and I know, Jim, you have been personally involved in many others in the city, in understanding the history of what housing policy has been. And the fact that rent control means a certain government involvement to ensure that there are protections in place that apply across the board. And in fact, what our administration had proposed and passed through the city council and was stuck at the State House was a form of rent stabilization that was not the old version that Boston had, but would ensure that the worst actors, the predatory increases of more than 10% a year in rents, that those landlords and property owners who were pushing people out with 30%, 40%, 100% rent increases, that there would be guardrails to protect against that. What we are seeing proposed now is, in fact, a good landlord tax credit, something that state law has made possible and something that has been working its way through the Boston City Council already. But I want to be clear that this is not a solution to the problems that we are trying to solve, which is asking those who are already being good landlords or those who might be on the edge of wanting to keep rents low to do so in exchange for tax breaks, which again would require additional resources from somewhere else from the city, while not doing anything to protect against the worst rent increases. Those who are increasing, if you are a property owner who could either choose to increase rents by 100%, clear out the whole building, and then jack up rents, or you can get a small tax break for keeping rents within 5%. If you're already headed down that pathway, this program, a voluntary program, is not going to capture or protect against the worst offenders.
But even
what
if
it
that-
will do
I'm sorry.
is take those who are already in the space of wanting to be good landlords and reward them, right, and give them tax dollars and a tax break. But it is a use of resources without offering the types of protections that we really need. And in fact, what we saw today was that this has been a distraction because the real policy underneath all of this is to keep everyone talking about some version of whether this is rent control or not rent control and whether it actually does anything, while the real proposal is to dismantle affordability requirements and in fact take us back to a time when it was anything goes for developers making money at the expense of affordability.
Brief question, hopefully for a brief answer, though. As long as the legislature, which is landlord-dominated, continues to say no to home rule petitions from you, for example, about rent stabilization, is the Kraft proposal better than nothing, or you'd reject it even if the legislature continues?
So in fact, we are, again, Councilor Gabriela Coletta Zapata has been sponsoring this provision, and it's had hearings, it's working its way through the council. It's already in the pipeline for the city to do something on this front. We have to be clear about what the parameters are to participate, what the level of tax break is that makes sense for the city, and we will get into all of that.
One last thing, where the details I have to say I'm not great on, so my apologies in advance. There is a soccer stadium being built in Everett. It's the Kraft soccer stadium. I didn't watch Josh Kraft's interview yet with John Keller. I am told he said he'll recuse himself from any Kraft family business with the city. I don't understand it vis-a-vis this. My understanding is the legislature said that the Krafts had to negotiate, not just with Everett, but with the city of Boston about whatever you call them, community benefits, that sort of thing. And what I read in the Globe is that so far their offer was $750,000 to something in Charlestown, and the city's response is, well, the model should be, and correct me if I'm wrong, the $68 million that Encore gave to Boston when the casino was built.
Right next door.
How does that, I mean, what's the state of things, and how does that work exactly when the family business of the Krafts is negotiating with the person that one of the sons in the Kraft family is trying to defeat? I don't know if I articulated that well, but I think you know what I'm talking about.
I mean, that's a gigantic conflict of interest that I think is on him to sort out, and honestly, to be more forthright on. You can't recuse yourself from being mayor, and this is a mega development project that is going to have tremendous impacts on the city of Boston, not just our residents in Charlestown who will bear the brunt of decisions made about transportation access. And in fact, this proposal so far, as I understand it, has been pitched as a no parking development. So the tens of thousands of fans who attend games are going to make their way from Sullivan Square in Charlestown over to Everett or potentially through Assembly Row, et cetera. But there's been no real details offered. I still have not heard from the Crafts on the proposal at all. There's been some conversation between the Revs and members of our team. They've reached out to Kairos Shen, who is leading our internal organizational efforts on this. And I believe there will be a staff level meeting happening this week as well. I have reached out to Mayor Maria of Everett, and so we're scheduled for going on a walk together later this week where we'll do, I want to be able to get my eyes on the site and actually see where different things are intended to go, because we have not heard anything from the project proponents themselves.
But the Revs, I mean, in all fairness, though, the Revs are speaking on behalf of the Kraft. So are they not? I mean, I don't know. Are they not? I mean, that.
In most, I will just say, it has been now multiple years where this proposal has been working its way through conversations in different, mostly closed-door spaces. I have personally asked about directly to Mr. Kraft and others about how Boston could support bringing soccer and the Revs into our city or closer to our city, because I think it's a fantastic opportunity. That conversation was never continued or acknowledged.
Mr. Kraft is Robert Kraft.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Dad.
We got it. Okay.
And there was silence
Okay.
until the legislature basically forced them to come to the table with the city of Boston, and now there's been some outreach. So I will look forward to seeing the site and working through getting the city of Boston a fair deal, because this is a major, major project, and you cannot lowball the residents of Boston because of profits when we will be the ones bearing much of the transportation impact. And I want to, again, just reiterate, it's also a fantastic opportunity. We know the difference that having professional sports franchises within the city can make. This is within the region. There are many, many people who are excited about this, but it has to work for transportation access, for public safety, and for fairness in terms of the impact on Boston.
David from Boston, you were on with the mayor.
Hi, David.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Jim and Marjorie, I love you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Love you, and I listen to your show all the time.
Thank you.
And so I just wanted to bring to your attention of what's going on in Mattapan, Dorchester, and Hyde Park. We are under attack when it comes from large developers trying to build in our communities and the city relaxing zoning laws so that they can do it. And what's happening is they're not just refurbing or refurbishing old houses or lots. They're tearing down microforests and trees. I'm actually on the Tree Alliance Committee in Boston, and they're trying to address it, but the tearing down of all of these mature trees, right? They're saying that we have to pass legislation in order to stop that. And we're going through all of these issues with our environment, and especially in Black and brown communities where we have asthma and high rates of all sorts of breathing.
David, we got it. What's your
issues.
question? We hear
Yeah.
you. What's your question for the mayor, please?
What are we doing about that? And also, the community process is broken. I think the mayor knows who I am. 7 houses on a dead-end street.
We
They're
got it.
building a 48-unit house.
We got it. David, thank you very much for your questions. We appreciate it. Mayor?
Yeah, it's great to hear from you, David. Thank you for all that you do, and shout out to the Tree Alliance, because this is really, I would say, not just important work, but life-saving work. As we see in other communities, the destruction of climate change, whether it's wildfires in the West or other food systems being destroyed and impacted in other locations. In Boston, our situation is flooding and heat, both of which can be helped by more tree canopy and ensuring that we have the right green infrastructure in place. So that's been a big focus. I think, David, as you know, our administration has for the first time ever invested in an arborist team so that finally there's support and staffing on the city side to be able to maintain the 30,000 street trees that we have on the streets and in our parks and urban wilds, and then to be able to work alongside the Tree Alliance and others to think about how to do so and protect private trees on private property as well. It's a very complex situation when it's a private property owner and they have say over what to do absent legislation and absent other rules, but we are working wherever we can to increase. We've received an $11 million grant from the previous federal administration to be able to build Boston's tree canopy. We have changed the defaults in how we install curb infrastructure and other street infrastructure so that the first ask and the first default materials are grass and trees and green to be able to absorb that water wherever possible. And we know that we certainly have to do more. Part of what we're seeing in Franklin Park is that the conversation around White Stadium is also a way to build a tree bank for the city of Boston and to be able to replenish hundreds of trees in a very core area that we need to make sure are healthy, maintained, removing the invasives, and having the right ecology so that the parks and open spaces can thrive on their own.
Thank you for the call. Mayor Wu, what's Love Your Block, please?
Love Your Block is one of the best programs all year. It's a now multi-decade tradition where community members come together and the city will facilitate basically neighborhood cleanups. It's often neighborhood associations who want to build community and get everyone involved on one single day to clean up an area, and the city will help by providing the rakes and whatever those things are that the garbage pickers. I'm doing the motion and supports. We help drive volunteers there, and this will happen across all neighborhoods in the city at times that work for them. And we're really excited to be able to bring this back.
So this is any time. It's not any particular time.
No, it's a particular day for each neighborhood that is set. So you can go to the
Can we
website
stay on the
and find
good
out more.
news for a second? You always bring something city
know.
related, and I don't want to hold it up because I'm afraid I'll hold it up upside down. Is this the right way?
That's the right way, yeah.
Okay, so I can show this to the camera. Marty's got, what is this?
That is your name, transliterated in Chinese.
Oh my gosh!
Yours
If I
is-
got it upside
oh,
down.
that's upside down. but-
Upside down.
And that
Wow.
that is not Jim's name. This one's your name.
Oh, that is really cool.
These came from our City Hall Lunar New Year celebration, which was a couple days ago. There was a artist there who was doing calligraphy with everyone's names, and so we figured we would
This is
throw
really
yours into the
neat.
pot too.
Thank you
That's
very
great.
much.
So happy Lunar New Year and Year of the Snake to everyone as well.
And to
yeah.
you too.
Okay.
Let's get Paul from West. Thank you, Mayor. Paul from West Roxbury. You're on with the mayor. Please be brief. We're running low on time. Hi.
Absolutely. Good morning, Mayor. Thank you.
Morning.
Let me start by thanking you for inaugurating the food waste recycling program in West Roxbury. I'd like to hear your plans for expanding that to other neighborhoods, number one. Number two, how about some recycling bins in our parks and playgrounds? I can't say that I've seen any or many. Brookline and Newton have some. And generally speaking, how do we know, how is all the recycling we dutifully put in our recycling bins, glass, metal, do we know how much of it is actually being recycled instead of ending up in landfills as we so often hear? Thank you.
Paul, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to try to go through all three pieces. One, thank you for participating in the neighborhood drop-off and recycling program. We now have certain sites around the city, and as you know, we have curbside food composting for the first time in the city, which has just really taken off, and there's still space for residents who want to sign up and have a cute little mini green bin that puts your food scraps in. That, in fact, is not only a way to divert scraps out of the landfill and to repurpose them for healthier uses like being turned into fertilizer, et cetera, but it is a huge help when it comes to rats as well. The number one challenge is having food interspersed through all parts of our waste disposal system, which then makes it difficult to limit and really protect against rats being able to access that food source. So that's a side benefit. When it comes to how we can expand this and whether this is actually getting to the right places, it's single stream recycling is quite hard. Anytime there's too much food waste, for example, caked onto food containers, it ends up making it not possible for them to accept it into the recycling stream. So we're taking a bit of a trade-off, either by being as inclusive as possible and making it as easy as possible for everyone just to dump all the things into one bin and then it gets sorted later, but then you really lose a chunk of it, or to be very strict and then not accept things into recycling if they don't meet certain standards or they have to be sorted very specifically. And right now we're using the first approach, but thinking through how to be better about efficiency and the environmental impact. And then your question about parks, yes, this is underway. This is something that's been in conversation for some time. So we're trying to sort this through, but that is definitely on the list for getting done, having recycling in the parks.
So I am not a big hockey fan. I kind of tell a lie. But the NHL is on break, I think, and there's this 4 countries, something or other. And what is the city doing to have some fun in the middle of this? Do I have this right so
Yes,
far? I do.
the Four
Okay.
Nations,
Four Nations
event. So this is several of the places where ice hockey is huge. U.S., Canada, Finland, and Sweden.
Okay.
And so the teams are all coming together, and in the lead up to hosting those events, those games at the Garden and in Montreal next week. This weekend we have Fan Fest on the Plaza, so everyone can come out. There's lots of festivities all weekend long, and last time we hosted this, it just was huge and welcomed a lot of visitors to the area and brought a lot of very passionate hockey fans together. So we hope everyone comes out and checks that out this
Is
weekend.
the head of the Players Association going to be there?
I'm not sure.
Who is he again?
I actually did. I got to spend some time with my predecessor, Marty Walsh.
Who's the
over
head
the
of the union
weekend
for the
at
players?
he was at the Winter Walk as
Oh,
well.
he was?
So,
Oh, great.
yes.
Terrific. Mayor, it's great to see you.
Yeah,
It was
thank
great
you
to see
very,
you
very
too.
much
Thank
coming
you.
in, and
Thank
you so much
congratulations
for your
again
time.
with your beautiful little girl.
Thanks for having me.